Well, today, right now, I'm a YouTuber. As I'm doing this, I'm a YouTuber, but I'm also an investor. That's another identity I have. I'm also a father. I'm also a citizen. I have a few identities, right? But am I a fixed identity? That's the key question. No, of course I'm not a fixed identity. I'm not like the one thing, because I change over time. That's the beauty of it, right? Back in the day, I was a student. Back in the day, when I was small, I was an infant, a toddler, a small child, an adolescent, and so on. I shed these identities, just like a snake sheds its skin. Well, maybe I'm a snake. Well, that's not a good metaphor, I suppose, but you know what I'm saying, right? I keep changing over time. I'm not a fixed thing. But there's all this talk about identity, about having a fixed identity. There are all these people who say, what is my identity? And they're all, confused about it. I don't quite understand it on the one hand, and on the other hand, I understand it perfectly about what's really going on. See, I don't understand why people are obsessing about identity, because you change identities over time. But I am under no illusions as to why there are some people who insist on pinning you down with a single identity. It's just a mechanism of control. Yeah, they are trying to control you. They are trying to fix you into place, to be like the one thing, the one replaceable cog, exactly the same as every other. That's why this insistence in contemporary society of what is your identity. See, back in the day when I was young, nobody gave a shit about what your identity was. Yeah, I mean, like when I was, a teenager or younger, nobody used the expression identity, quote unquote, to define themselves. Nobody cared. It was, fuck all that. Yeah? What people cared about was what you did. And in point of fact, that's the reasonable thing. What you do is more important than who you are. Yeah? Who you are, it's a changeable thing. What you do, well, that gives direction. An identity is inherently unstable, whereas the thing that you are doing, the thing that you are trying to achieve, your goal, that's a fixed thing. And that is more important than what is your identity. And think how foolish the notion of identity is in a lot of circumstances. See, okay, like in the United States, I'm a Latino, right? But I don't really go around saying that I'm a Latino. I could really care less, right? But, my identity is Latino. A lot of the leftist, SJW type people, they would qualify me as a Latino. Well, probably not. Maybe I lost my Latino card because I'm too right-wing for the motherfuckers. But you know what I'm saying, right? In the United States, I'm a Latino. That's my identity in the United States, my racial identity in the United States. But when I go to Chile, what the fuck good is it for me to be called a Latino? Because everybody else is a fucking Latino in fucking Chile, right? It doesn't matter. You see my point. An identity does not matter in different circumstances, whereas what you are doing does. What you are doing does not change with your environment. An identity does. When I'm writing, for instance, when I was a writer, because I'm not really anymore, but back when I was a writer, yeah, I was hanging out with other writers, right? Do you think we all stood around talking and saying, oh, we're writers, like, I don't know, fucking geese repeating the same mantra? No! We talked about, the problems we were having with our different projects, this fucking producer, this fucking editor, the fucking agent who doesn't return our calls. I mean, bitching and moaning about the things that are inherent in our profession, but we were all talking about the things that we were doing, which is basically struggling to get ahead, yeah? We weren't talking about our identity. Our identity, who gave a shit, We're just writers. We're just working at writing. We're just trying to succeed as writers, but we don't care about the identity of a writer. So who cares about your identity? Entomologists. Yeah, think about it, That's who cares about your identity, yeah? The people who want to pin you down. The people who want to pin you down on a whiteboard and label you and be done with you and ignore you and not have to pay attention to you anymore. The idea of having an identity only serves for other people so that they can control you. But if you fix yourself to an identity, if you decide that you are X, whatsoever X may be, but you fix yourself to that identity forever, then you can never change. See, you're pinned to the whiteboard just like a little insect. You're pinned there, you can't move, you can't change, you can't grow. You can't evolve. That's the perniciousness of identity. Yeah, identity politics, I mean, I fucking hate that shit, right? Okay, it's not that they're fucking left-wingers, no. What happens is that, see, it's an ideology that refuses to let you change. All it wants is for you to be fixed, to be the fixed, the one thing that does not change, that does not alter, that does not evolve. See, if I had remained a writer, there are so many things that I would not have done. If I'd allowed myself to be stuck with that label, writer, for the rest of my life, from the time I graduated from college until now, I would not have been a whole host of other things that I became. I became a film producer, I became a film director, I became an entrepreneur, a venture capitalist, I became a real estate mogul, believe it or not. I became a YouTuber. I became different things. I evolved. I changed. I shed that skin and moved on, right? And that's the beauty of life. You don't want to be the one fucking thing your whole fucking life. You want to grow and change and evolve. Because growing, changing, evolving is the only way you can adapt to your environment. Because your environment is always changing. And so the notion of fixing yourself to just one identity or a fixed number of identities, it will prevent you from adapting to the world around you. And in point of fact, it will force you to fight the changing world around you as opposed to surfing it. Yeah? If you think of life as a wave, yeah? And it's constantly changing, then your job is not to fight that wave, but to surf it. To surf the zeitgeist, to surf the environment that you're in and constantly evolve, adapt, change, become different things, or more to the point, not allow yourself to be fixed by an identity. And see, here we go back to the issue of what you do. See? I'm a firm believer that, what you do is who you are. Not what you talk about, what you say, the labels you apply to yourself. No, that's not who you are. Who you are is what you do. If you say, for instance, that you're, a filmmaker or a writer, okay, like me, well, like I was back in the day, because I am no longer a writer, but back in the day when I was a writer, I wrote, right? But suppose you adopt the identity that you're a writer, and you adopt all the stereotypical behaviors of a writer, but you don't actually write anything, huh? You don't write any screenplay, any novel, and more to the point, you don't make any money as a writer because you don't have any work to sell, right? Because you have like a computer with these word processing programs, and you have the clothes that make you look like a writer, and you have like a bunch of pens, expensive pens, Mont Blanc and shit like that, right? And you have a little writing studio or a little writing nook, right? And you have everything that gives you the identity of being a writer, but are you earning a living as a writer? Yes or no? Because if it's no, then you're not a fucking writer, you're just play acting. And that's the point, and that's really, I suppose, why I object so much to this notion of identity. Because it's so easy to adopt an identity and to go about all the peripheral and stereotypical functionalities and the disguise of that identity, right? The clothing of that identity, but not the actuality of that identity, not the functionality of that identity. I can pretend to be a woman and claim to be a woman, like transsexuals do, right? I can dress up as a woman and say that I feel like a woman and all the rest of it, but the fact is, can I have children? I mean, bear them in my uterus? Yes or no? No? Do I have XY chromosomes in every cell of my body? Yes or no? I mean, you see what I'm talking about. See, I can pretend to be something if I cling to this notion of identity. I can be trans woman, trans writer, trans anything, yeah? Just pretending to be that thing. If I hold on to this notion of identity, but if I focus on the issue of what I actually do, then it all falls apart. You see what I mean? In other words, the whole notion of identity, it seems to me, is something for immature minds who are play acting, at the things that they would want to be, the things that they would want to do, but do not have the ability to do these things. You can play act at being a writer, you can play act at being a woman, but if you cannot fulfill the thing that makes a person a writer, that makes a person a woman, that makes a person whatever, then you're just pretending. You're just fooling yourself. And you're trying to make everybody else around you agree with your foolishness, agree with your delusion. You see what I mean? And you see why it's so pernicious for a man. Because a man does not define himself by who he is. A man defines himself by what he does. See? And that's a key concept of what it is to be a man. Because men, especially young men, are all about bluster, about bullshitting, about showing off that which they really aren't. And what's going on is that they are pretending to be the kind of guy that they want to be when they grow up, when they mature. You see it in small children all the time. You know, you see the small boy pretending to be a fireman or a soldier or whatever, right? He's pretending to be that because he aspires to that. And in his immaturity and youth, I'm talking, you know, a little 7-8-year-old boy, right? He pretends to be a soldier or a fireman, right? Because that's what he would want to be. And so he pretends. And he goes through the motions of being a fireman or a soldier. And he feels that he is a fireman or a soldier, but of course he is not, because he's a child, of course, right? But he wishes to be that thing. And in time, as he grows into the man that he will become a fireman or a soldier or whatever. And he will grow into that identity, but more to the point, he will actually do that thing that makes him a soldier, a fireman, a writer, whatever the fuck. Yeah? He will do those things. And from his actions derive his identity. But it's not the identity first. The identity comes along as the name tag for what you do. So don't allow yourself to fall into this trap, this adolescent, infantile trap of labeling yourself something, but not actually doing it. Huh? You label yourself a writer, but don't actually write and don't earn a living as a writer. You're not a writer, you're just play acting. Just like the 8-year-old child who, you know, runs around with a toy rifle and pretends to be a soldier. He's just pretending. Yeah, it's not real. And don't fall into this trap, because, you know, so much of our contemporary society is encouraging guys to fall into the trap of pretense, of pretending to be something. And it's encouraging guys to hold on to an identity that has no basis in reality. It's just like a Halloween mask. Yeah? You want to get the fuck away from that shit, because that leads to failure and ultimately insanity. Yeah? Because if you're just pretending to be something, but you aren't that actual thing, you're not doing the things that are intrinsic to that identity, then ultimately your head is going to realize it. Yeah? No matter how much you fool yourself. And that divergence is just going to lead to a breakdown. It's inevitable, man. Like I said before, the whole reason that our society is encouraging this identity bullshit, right, of identifying yourself as something, you know, as a black man, as a Latino, as an Asian, as a gay or a straight or a trans or this or that or the other, whatever the fuck. It's just mechanisms of control so that they can put you in a slot and never allow you to change. And more to the point, never allow you to grow beyond these limitations that an identity inherently imposes, because that's what it does. An identity fixes you in position like an entomologist pinning a butterfly to a whiteboard. Do you want to be pinned to a whiteboard?